In the last 2 entries to this series, we went over how the base of the costume was made, where the fabrics are from, and how the webbing was applied in a multi-step process. In today's outing, we'll be going over my processing of the entire mask from the webbing to the face shell and the lenses, fresh off of the 3D printer. I'll also be applying the webs to the boots since we held off on that last time. You'll also get a look at a particular method that I use that tends to make adding shoes to the suit super easy. If you want some more context about this suit and why it's being made, make sure to click the card in the top right of the screen to check out the previous episodes. I know, backtracking isn't the most fun thing in the world, but if you're gonna take that journey, especially in a Spidey suit, you're gonna need some... When this package first arrived and I unboxed it, the feet of the costume were left completely open, and that's okay. It was a bit of a surprise, but not a bad one, as me and the creator who had sewn the suit already discussed that I would add shoes myself. I sort of expected it to come like those cheaper Spidey suits on Amazon and AliExpress that are more like socks. Come to find out though, this method made things way easier in the long run. Before we can even get to adding any webbing or shoe soles to the outside of the suit, I had to install the shoes themselves. To do this, I had to put the bottom half of the suit on to ensure the fabric was stretched properly when gluing the shoes down. My choice of shoe for this was actually a pair that is not made anymore. These are what's called Moves or Moves shoes. They're admittedly pretty cool, but the company didn't last all that long. The main premise of these shoes was that they could be running shoes or slippers with the feature of a detachable sole. I have 2 pairs of these and will use them whenever a suit with those sock-like bottoms doesn't have any soles attached. This time around, I'm only using the base shoe. I like the shape it provides and they fit my feet perfectly, which is important for long-term events or filming any stunt sequences. I won't be using the detachable sole sold with this shoe with the Spidey suit, but we'll get into that in just a bit. Once I had the suit on, it was time to put on the shoes. These things slip on rather easy, so that was no problem. With how it's sewn and the open bottoms on this suit, it molded around the top of the shoes pretty effortlessly. I took a seat and just went one shoe at a time. Still wearing everything, we want to keep the fabric stretched or else it could change how the suit fits. I pulled the edges under the shoe a bit more to ensure that the tension is there and that it'll wrap around the shoe nicely, and then just glued that down. Carefully making my way around the entire edge of each shoe, not applying too much pressure, but just enough. It dried pretty fast. I waited about 10 minutes before standing on them, and I'm using Loctite super glue. Also, Loctite, you should totally sponsor me. You're in like every single one of these videos. Anyway, I went ahead and gave the shoes a stress test with the freshly glued fabric. Everything held pretty great. I didn't have to make any touch-ups since we took it so slow that first time around. It was at this point I did see what it would look like with the detachable soles provided by Moves, and it doesn't look bad at all, though some people tend to think so. It just doesn't really hit the vibe I'm going for though. In Spectacular Spider-Man, the bottom of Spidey's shoes are red. The whole point of this suit is to stay as true as possible to the source material with modernized fabrics and techniques, so we're going to take care of that soon. For now, I went ahead and put the boot on the mannequin leg. Gluing shoes for about an hour or 2 is no problem, but I can't sit completely still for 12 hours after. If you've seen either of the previous videos by this point, this process is going to be pretty familiar. I'm again using those heat erasable pens I found on Amazon. You can also find washable pens or markers out there too, but it gets really annoying to have to wash the suit after every screw up. Once I had gone around and was happy with the drawn webbing pattern on both boots, it was time to really add them on. I grabbed a few paper towels and that bottle of paint, and it was time to get to work. We all know how this goes by now, slow and steady. Luckily, not many people are paying attention to Spidey's shoes a lot of the time, so minor mess-ups are normally fine in this area. Well, now we've got some shoes installed and webs on the boots, but we're gonna need some... This process is the simplest of all of them, honestly. You can buy replacement shoe soles on Amazon for like $10 to $15 in almost any color, so you don't just have to use red. When they arrive, they're super oversized, but this is for a reason. You actually shape it exactly to size to match your shoe shape and your personal shoe size. Since I had already installed the shoes into the suit, it was pretty simple to just trace that onto the back side of the sole. I took my time to cut it as close as possible, staying on point with my tracing line from around the shoe. Once it was cut up, I matched it back to the bottom of the shoe on the suit, and the sizing seemed pretty perfect. So instead of tracing a shoe again, I used the sole that I had just cut out. It was a little easier to trace this way since it would actually stay flat. The backside of this material is made in a way that it takes to glue super easily, so using more of that Loctite, I did a nice spread and starting attaching it to the suit. Holding pressure for about 15 seconds was enough to create a bond, and it was holding just fine, so I moved on to the second shoe. I like to do this in halves as well, so I glued the back half of the sole down first by the heel. I would follow it up on the front half to make sure it was properly secured. Occasionally coming back to apply some more pressure, I went ahead and let these sit overnight to fully cure. So we've got some finished Spidey shoes, something people don't tend to pay attention to. But now it's time to work on the most important thing when it comes to a Spider-Man suit. Last episode, I included a portion of me drawing a bunch of circles on a table like a crazy person. But trust me, there's a method to my madness. In the Spectacular Spider-Man show, Spidey's web design is a big factor of what sets him apart from different animated iterations of the character that have all had pretty similar web patterns. This one is more spread out, less like actual webs, and he has a circle in the middle of his mask. I have always loved this little detail, and there was no way I was going to make this suit and not include that. Those little circles I had painted on the table were for exactly this. Last time we took care of the main webbing portion on the mask, so the placement of this little circle was actually rather important. I did have quite a few to choose from, so it took me a little bit, but I finally found the most symmetrical one that also seemed like the right size. Using that Loctite once again, I applied a super small amount to the backside of the ring. This is puff paint, it wasn't going to need a lot. It attached really easily to the fabric Cavan printed, and it didn't seem to warp at all. A literal blessing, so I'm super happy with how this turned out. It was also at this point I went ahead and cut eye holes on the mask so I could actually see out of the damn thing. But we all know nobody wants to go up to Spider-Man when he looks like this. So let's get to working on those. Shout out once again to Spider-Forge and Port Props on Instagram for this super sweet face shell print. I'll be making a more detailed video on face shells in the near future, so look out for that. This model is super sweet and I have been using it for some time now. These are somewhat sanded, but not nearly to the state that we'll need them, so let's get to it. I used a few different levels of grit for my sandpaper. The main goal here is to get the lenses as smooth as possible, so we're shaving down the plastic to an even level. This does take a while. Now obviously if you have a power sander or something of the sort, then this won't take as long for you if you choose to do something like this. After quite some time of sanding out all those blemishes, I was left with these, and they look pretty good. In this episode and the next, I was in the middle of traveling for my job, so I had to maintain my space in the hotel room while trying to build a spider suit. I built myself a little safety bay in the bathtub of the hotel we were in at the time, trying to make sure none of the spray paint would actually get on the ceramics. I placed down that cardboard I ripped up a minute ago as another layer for the lenses to sit on in the bathtub. With a bed of tissues built, it was time to paint these guys up. I'm painting this with all-in-one spray paint I picked up from Hobby Lobby. So of course, keep a little distance, pass over sprays, and hit all the angles. I made sure to do all of this, and I did 3 coats in total. While those were drying, you'll never believe what came up on the hotel TV.
Vincent or something?
We know it's hard. But it's the truth, Miles.
Is that why you're here?
Now, Spidey is known to have reflective lenses in almost every adaptation of the character in some way. Sometimes they're more metallic, whereas other times it's more of just a plastic film. Well, that's the look I'm going to go for in this costume, since a metallic shine isn't particularly in the Spectacular Spider-Man very often at all. There are some cases where we can see a shine of light in the white of Spidey's eyes, so this feels like a nice medium. I had a leftover salad box with a plastic flat top, completely see-through, and this was honestly completely unplanned. I was panicking because I didn't even bring materials for this portion of the lens, so this came in clutch. Once the lenses were dry, I simply traced the shape onto the clear plastic and cut that out. Obviously, you'll want to repeat this process twice. Those being cut out and matched up to the back of the lens, I think it looked pretty good. I tend to use PC fan mesh for pretty much all of my Spider-Man lenses for visibility purposes. You can find other mesh material out there that may provide a cleaner eyepiece, but Vision is pretty important when shooting a film, so I went this route. Now that the paint was fully cured on the frames, we have a layer of plastic and a layer of white mesh for each lens. It's time to glue it all together for that finished piece. I really hope I don't even need to tell you what glue I'm using here. You'll always want the plastic to go to the most front of the lens, facing out toward the outside of the mask, or whoever would be in front of you. With a few drops of glue around the rim of the plastic, the white mesh will then follow right behind that. Whew, last thing to do is glue these things on. I have already glued down the fabric of the mask to the face shell, just to make sure that there's no gap between the lenses and the shell. We want that proper shape. Carefully enough, I lined the back of those lenses with more of that Loctite super glue and set them on the mask. We are so close. That'll about wrap it up for this episode of Becoming Spider-Man. Make sure you tune in next time to see the completed suit being worn for the first time in New York City. If this video helped you or entertained you in any way, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.